Let the bass kick. Let the bass kick. Let the bass kick.
Think about it.
Let the bass kick.
Think about it. 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 biggest thing that's ever happened.
Breakdown.
Think about it. Think about it. Think about it.
Kick.
Think about it. 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 Think about it.
Good evening. Welcome to the anniversary celebration of the Benefit Corporation legislation here in Maryland. A pioneering state that first embraced this transformative business model. Introduced by Congressman Jamie Raskin 13 years ago during his tenure as mayor-senator, this legislation marked a significant stride toward blending business ingenuity with social responsibility. Over 2 decades ago, upon my entry to the City Council, I was deeply moved by the struggles many faced in the community, just to meet their basic needs. My wife Joyce and I devoted ourselves to alleviating immediate hardships, ensuring access to essential resources like food and clothing. Yet, as the years unfolded, we realized that more sustainable solution lay in empowering individuals to kickstart or expand their small businesses, paving the way for self-reliance and economic growth. This evening, we're excited to delve into how bolstering community support for local entrepreneurs, especially through avenues like local investments, can be a game changer in nurturing a robust local economy. Truly, it takes a village to foster a thriving marketplace. Tonight, we are privileged to have economic expert Michael Schuman elucidate his 12-point local investment plan, a blueprint for galvanizing local economic vigor. Alongside him, a panel of esteemed guests will further explore how we can amplify support for our local entrepreneurs, a critical step towards a vibrant and self-sustaining community. Before we delve into these insights, I wish to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Adventist Community Services of Greater Washington for their gracious sponsorship, mirroring our collective aspiration for elevating individuals to a new plateau of self-sufficiency. As we share this evening's dialogues far and wide through a live cast and later a replay of Takoma Park's or on Takoma Park's cable TV, I invite each of you to actively engage and disseminate the learnings from tonight's event. Together, let's envision and work towards a community where economic empowerment is within everybody's reach. And now I would like to ask Mayor Talisha Searcy, Mayor of Takoma Park, to come and welcome us.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the City of Takoma Park, I want to thank you all for joining us today. You know, one of the things as I learn more and more about the value of benefit corporations is the power of the letter B. and it is about making sure that we are capitalizing on the benefits that these organizations can provide to our communities at the state, local, as well as the federal level. You know, in Takoma Park, we pride ourselves on ensuring that we don't have profit-seeking, profit-maximizing entities in our community. But it's important for us to learn how to support those organizations that truly meet the spirit of the Takoma Park community. And that means that we have to work collectively to identify those opportunities for the organizations in our community and across our nation that are striving to make the world a better place. So again, thank you all so much for coming out tonight. We really appreciate you joining us this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. And we are honored tonight to have Maryland Delegate Lori Charkoudian here with us, and I'd like to have her to come to the podium for a minute.
Good evening, everyone. Let me try that again. Good evening, everyone. All right, I know the people like watching on TV. I hope that they're talking back at their TV as well, because I expect, this will be a really good conversation. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I want to welcome you to District 20, where Takoma Park resides and where I have the honor to represent in the Maryland General Assembly. And I just want to say I serve on the Economic Matters Committee, and we spend a lot of time in these conversations about what rules we are going to put in place for corporations that function in Maryland, and how we are going to protect labor, and how we are going to protect the environment, and how we're going to how we're going to protect consumers. And this conversation keeps coming back to, good actors, bad actors. And the crux of it is that most corporations are designed to maximize shareholder returns, and that is their legal responsibility. That is the design. And so while we need all kinds of companies in our world, and we need to keep putting in guardrails to how they function in our world, we also need to reshape and create more opportunities for companies that don't only have the goal and don't only have the legal responsibility to maximize shareholder responsibility. And that is what B Corps allow us to do. And there's experts here on B Corps, folks who are going to talk much more in detail about that. But I just want to celebrate that because it really shifts the kind of conversation that we get to have about what policies we need when we can shift the kind of conversations we're having about what kind of companies we're working with and encouraging and supporting to flourish. I get 2 bites at the apple today, so I get to welcome you here and celebrate, and then I'm really looking forward to the other piece. I'll get to be on the panel and talk about other forms of infrastructure in addition to the infrastructure of our corporations themselves. What are the other public infrastructures we can put in place that really maximize our ability to have money circulating in our local economy in a way that is really beneficial to everyone, including beneficial to consumers, to the environment, and to people living really a healthy and flourishing life. So really excited for this conversation. Happy to welcome you here and look forward to the rest of the evening.
Thank you so much, Delegate. I appreciate your coming out and supporting your own community. This is right here in Takoma Park. Okay, now I would like to invite a visionary entrepreneur and a cherished friend of mine, Tababu Asefa, who alongside his wife Sarah Musi have pioneered the Benefit Corporation for Africa, embodying a remarkable fusion of business acumen and social commitment. My wife Joyce and I have had the privilege of knowing and supporting Tababu and Sarah since 2005, witnessing firsthand and supporting their decade-long journey. Their foresight led to the establishment of the Business Corporation for Africa, a groundbreaking initiative aimed at fostering sustainable business practices across the African continent, aiming to improve U.S.-Africa trade. Today, he brings to the panel later in the session a rich tapestry of experiences and insights on how the principles of benefit corporations can significantly contribute to our community and benefit aspiring entrepreneurs. And I'd like to have him come up now and give you a little background on the context of what we're doing here tonight. Thank you.
Hi, salam ጤና ይስጥልኝ. How are you? Hey, good to see you. My name is Teba Wasafa. I usually define myself as, for a lack of any better label, I call myself a cultural and social entrepreneur. That's on the lighter side of the description, but I've left my home country in Ethiopia early age. I've lived in a few countries, and now I live in America, and I've made home in Takoma Park. In this short life, I've seen a world in crisis, culturally, environmentally, socially, name it. And today, I don't know, left and right, up and down, we are in crisis. It's a very dangerous time. It's crazy all over the place. And when you scratch any problem that we have, be it socially, environmental, economic, politics, when you scratch it, at the bottom there is an economic issue. You know, we live in the biggest democracy in the world, and we cast our vote. We try to go left or right, but the most important vote we cast is every day when we pull our wallet and transact in this economy that works, that puts hardworking people in poverty. You know, every time you pull your wallet out, that's your purchasing power. And next to that, there is an investment power. Next to that, we have a social capital. Next to that, we have a political power. The people have the power to change the world. It is within us. Forget about power to the people. The power is with us. But what are we going to do with it? What are we going to do with it? Before, you know, a very famous, prominent political economist I respect wrote a book, and the title in bold letters says, "What then must we do now? The world is going crazy. The economic system we're following is going to take us over the cliff. The question is, what are we going to do now?" I'm not trying to dramatize because I live with this on a daily basis. I've dedicated my life to help poor farmers in Africa have a competitive edge. Those who work very, very hard, who live in the Garden of Eden but cannot even drink clean water in a billion-dollar industry. Okay, so why am I saying this? I want to bring your attention to the equation here. Unless you're scared, you won't be innovative. Unless you're scared, you don't take it seriously. Unless you're scared, next time you pull your wallet, you don't ask yourself, what am I doing? Because there's a consequence, locally, internationally. The International Economic Order has, maximizing profit maximization has taken over. The political system is taken over. So our humanity can only be regained or recaptured on a local level if we're conscious, if we, thank you very much. I've been trying hard to get Michael to come. He wrote a wonderful book. You need to get it. Local economy, local solution. The last one, put your money where your life is. Because this is where job is created. This is where, back in the days, every main street had all kind of small businesses. Now we work, we bring money, and the big corporations suck it out of us. Look at the gap, the income gap in the world. It's crazy. So we can't change the world, but we can make a difference on local level by considering investment locally, considering questioning the purchasing power, questioning our investment power. That's why we're here. And Michael has done an amazing job putting the rationale. Today he's here to tell, oh, by the way, Benefit Corporation for Africa, the state of Maryland enacted it in 2010. I'm going to accuse the state of Maryland. You gave birth to a wonderful child and neglected it as the policymakers. It's a fatherless child, because that is what's going to inject liveliness into us. You have to invest it. You have to walk the talk. We have to put resources on the table. I invited a lot of entrepreneurs who have the capacity, but for a lack of resources, they're locked in their, one time I participated, I'm sorry, all over the place because the story is all over the place. I was in a Zoom call about affordable housing. How the hell are we going to afford housing to buy in Takoma Park unless we increase our income? And I interjected a question and I said, forget about affordable. It's not going to be affordable. It's going crazy. The only thing we can do is raise the income of our local community, people who have talent but locked out of access to capital. Every apartment that you see, you walk by, there is a person behind it with talent, aspiration, know-how, and knowledge, being marginalized, not having any resources, not having any social capital. They're just doing selling their labors on a daily basis. So, the other day I saw this trailer. There's a documentary being filmed. It says a silent transformation happening everywhere in every corner, from a small coffee growing region in Ethiopia to Takuma Park. So we have to have a conscious effort. We have to have a deliberate, intentional engagement, and we have to ask ourselves, forget choosing for a president for once every year or once every whatever. Let's put our money where our life is. That's what we're going to gain it. And from here all the way to the coffee growing region. So I hope I got your attention, and because it's amazing how hard we work to put this together. Thank you, Terry, for making it happen. And thank you, Michael, for your... He lives in California. He came from Europe because he's dedicated to the issue. So give him a warm... You guys walked a few blocks and drove a few blocks. The brother came all the way from California. So, yeah. And thank you. Mike, take it from here.
Well, thank you to Babu for that warm welcome, and thanks to all of you for coming tonight. I remember somewhere around 2006, at that point I was on the board of an organization called BALI, the Business Alliance for Local Living Economies, and we had as our featured speaker 3 gentlemen who were announcing a new concept called B corporations. And it was a very curious thing, because the idea that you could get thousands or tens of thousands of businesses to embrace this high standard of social responsibility, it seemed like a mighty reach at the time. But they got going and it just took off. And about 3 years after that, at that point, a state representative, Raskin, reached out to me. We had known each other for many years, and he said, I have a piece of legislation to do a kind of a B Corp light, what we're calling a benefit corporation bill, and there's some enthusiasm around that. Would you write some testimony for that? And I did, and a bunch of other people did, and Maryland became the first state to pass this. It was remarkable. And what is the number? Is there 37 states that have? 38. Okay, 38. And the District of Columbia. And just tell the...
You got your slides up there?
Oh, yes.
So if you,
Good.
I didn't know he gave you a thing to do.
Okay, good. All right, excellent. I thought I was being told to stop, so. All right, excellent. So I feel like we've made this unbelievable progress, but here's the thing. B corporations, benefit corporations, they are all part of a strategy to build a thriving and fair and environmentally sensitive economy. And it's one thing to identify companies, it's another thing to help them to thrive and to spread. And what you need in order to do that is capital. And that's why I've been focusing on this issue of local investment. How do we move our capital to local businesses we love and care about? So I've titled today's presentation, Accelerating Local Investment, a New Strategy for Revitalizing Maryland. Because it began here with B Corps, I feel like it can begin here also in the field of local investment. So it looks like I pressed a little too hard there. Okay, so if we had a long time together, and we don't, I would show a mess of slides and data that would make 3 important points about local business. The first is that most of the jobs in our economy are local business. It's somewhere in the range of 60 to 80%, depending on how you define local. The second point that I would make is that locally owned businesses are critical for economic development. A ton of studies show this. Why? Because locally owned businesses spend more of their money locally, and they contribute to a high multiplier effect. And if you want to understand the importance of relationships with local business, just study the lifestyle of Tobabu, right? And the kinds of relationships that he has built in this area. The last point that I want to make is that locally owned businesses are profitable. In fact, they are probably more profitable than Fortune 500 companies. So this graph here on the right, which is a little hard to read from where you're sitting, it's from a Canadian study looking at businesses north of our border. And what it shows is that the most profitable businesses have 10 to 20 employees. The least profitable businesses are those businesses with over 500 employees. So let's take a step back. We, I think, all accept these propositions. Local businesses are everywhere, they're highly profitable, we love them for the community. So let's find out how invested you all are in them. So by show of hands here, how many people here do their banking at a local bank or credit union? Okay, so I see about 4 hands out of a group of 25-ish. Second question, those of you with any form of savings, could be in a 401k, could be in an IRA, how many of you have at least 1% of your savings in locally owned business? Okay, I see a meek hand, another meek hand. All right, I've made third meek hand. Folks, you are the problem. We are the problem. You are systematically over-investing in Fortune 500 companies that are completely disconnected from your community, and you're 100% ignoring local businesses that you know are critical for community vitality. We got to fix this problem. And if we don't fix this problem, don't expect much in the world to change. The good news is that there has been a lot of change. Historically, it was very difficult for grassroots investors, and most of us are not wealthy, most of us are in that grassroots investors category, but it was very difficult for us to put even a penny into a locally owned business, because that business historically had to do $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 of legal work in order to do the disclosure documents and to allow a grassroots investor to put money in. We changed this. You may recall this guy, our President Obama in 2012. I took this picture with my iPhone in the Rose Garden. It was the first and the only time I've been in the Rose Garden. And what we were celebrating was the signing of the so-called Jobs Act. And the Jobs Act legalized investment crowdfunding. The basic arrangement was that any company could now go on to a licensed federal portal, a website, and it could raise, with relatively little paperwork, relatively little expense, up to $1 million. And any American could invest up to $2,200 per year in these companies. Now, since then, that ceiling has been raised per company from $1 million to $5 million. So what has happened since is really quite remarkable. Here's the record. So investment crowdfunding got out of the legal box with all the regulations it needed in 2016. So in the years since, something like 1.5 million Americans have invested $2 billion in 7,000 companies. The average company that's using investment crowdfunding now is raising about $400,000. The average investor is putting in close to $1,000. The most successful businesses have been those run by women and people of color. That is, those people who have been systematically excluded from traditional capital markets. They have been the beneficiaries of this legal change. But you know, I have come to the conclusion that $2 billion, as good as that is, it's nowhere near enough. My goal is 50 trillion or higher. So we're just a little bit of the way to $50 trillion. And it's become clear to me that it's not enough to change the law. That's good. But you have to mobilize people. So what I want to do is share 12 thoughts about what could be done in Maryland to mobilize people to do more investment locally here. And these are ideas that could be done at the city level, or the county level, or the state level, or all of the above. So number one is just education. And those of you who actually are interested in getting more educated, I have a journal, a little newsletter that I distribute for free every 2 weeks called the Main Street Journal. And on our homepage, I have 50 videos that people watch for free to get background on local investment. But I can't do it alone. You should be seeding all kinds of educational activities in the state with starting in the schools and going with entrepreneurship programs and working with grassroots groups who are interested in investment and going to fraternal organizations. We should be educating everyone possible to understand the value and the possibilities of local investment. Number two, LION. LION stands for the Local Investment Opportunity Network of Port Townsend, Washington. Port Townsend is a town of about 10,000 people, about 2 hours drive north of Seattle. In 2007, the guy on the right, James Fraser, a former hedge fund manager, set up this organization, LION, which is a potluck dinner. And the potluck dinner brings together informally local businesses that are looking for capital and local investors that might be interested in putting money into those businesses. And all that LION does is facilitate relationships. Just this one little social invention is responsible for creating investment ties that total $1 million per year going into businesses in Port Townsend every year since 2007. Remember, Port Townsend is a 10,000 person town. So wherever you live, whether it's Tacoma Park or elsewhere, take your population and scale it accordingly. But we should be having all of these kinds of groups. And this is something, again, that the city and the county and the state can facilitate, can encourage these kinds of groups to come together and build the relationships for local investing. Number three, publish a list. If you go online, you will find a pretty mediocre website that I helped create with a colleague in Baltimore called the Maryland Neighborhood Exchange. And it's a list of local businesses looking for capital that are listed on the crowdfunding sites. And it turns out that when you have a conversation with someone and they say, well, all right, I'm interested in local business, but I don't know where I can find one I can invest in. Make it easy for people. Now, we shouldn't have to do this. This should be on Baltimore City's website, or it should be on Tacoma City's website, or it should be on Maryland's Economic Development website. But because we were doing this on our own, I'll just give you some numbers. For a 2-year period during COVID, so roughly 2020 to 2022, we listed a bunch of BIPOC-run businesses, and it helped to mobilize about 10,000 investors to move $4 million into 72 businesses in Baltimore. So just having a list makes a difference. And I'm guessing that adding a tab to the Tacoma Park website that says, okay, here's the list of companies looking for capital would cost about $10. Number 4, don't just list them in cyberspace, circulate the listings. So starting about 6 weeks ago with my Main Street Journal, I now list all the companies that have gone onto the national portals in the last 2 weeks. So every week there is about 30, 40 new listings that we have there. Getting things into people's inboxes is, I think, an important part of reminding them that actually, yeah, there are these businesses looking for capital. And again, I think this is something that the city should do, that you should be sending around lists of all companies looking for capital as a reminder to people, think about putting your money into them. Number 5, creating funds. So this is a handbook that I did with 3 colleagues 2 years ago called Community Investment Funds, a how-to guide for building local wealth, equity, and justice. This is for free on the web. You'll easily find it on the website of the National Coalition for Community Capital. One of the things that we do in here is dissect the legality of how to create funds. Now, why are funds so important? The truth is that right now, to be a local investor, it takes a lot of work. A lot of us have that commitment and interest, so we put in that work. But the reason why in our normal investments we invest in funds, whether they're pension funds or mutual funds, is that we want someone else to do all that work for us. We want that other person who we know, trust, and love to do the selection and the management. We want diversification, so if one business goes bad, we don't lose everything. And we also want what we call liquidity. We want the ability to move our money in and out. And a fund, well run, would allow us to do that. Now, it turns out that there are some interesting new types of funds that we can create that get around the onerous requirements of what's called the Investment Company Act of 1940. So NC3 has discovered that if you focus on real estate, a real estate fund is not regarded as a fund. If 60% of your capital is in real estate and the other 40% is in businesses, you're a real estate company, not a fund, and therefore you as a real estate company can go out and crowdfund, which you couldn't do as a fund, but as a real estate company, you can crowdfund grassroots people to put money into your company. So we could create real estate companies across Maryland focused on affordable housing and commercial development, and this is beginning to happen. NC3 actually is working with 6 communities across the country. The biggest one is Cincinnati to create these funds now. Number 6, issuing municipal bonds. I don't know if you folks recognize this guy. This was the mayor of Burlington in the early 1980s, named Bernie Sanders. And Bernie did a lot of interesting things as a mayor, but one of the most interesting was that he created a land trust. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of what a land trust is. Most of you know what it is. It's a nonprofit that supports various forms of affordable housing. But he capitalized it with a small municipal bond offering that got the land trust going so they could start buying properties. Today, this land trust that started with, I think it was about $100,000 of municipal money, has grown into $100 million asset that supports several thousand families in Burlington with affordable housing. That's an amazing accomplishment, but it shows the power of well-targeted municipal bonds. There are something like 50 green banks in the United States. Green banks are mostly raising capital from real banks that are looking for credit under the Community Reinvestment Act, or from philanthropy, or from government agencies. All of that is great, but we should be adding grassroots investment to the green banks. We have a green bank in Montgomery County, and foolishly, they're not paying attention to this. We've got to focus them on getting grassroots money into the green bank. Give you an example of a state that's doing it. The state of Connecticut, about 2 years ago, issued what they call green liberty bonds, low denomination bonds purchasable by grassroots investors in order to support solar energy on affordable housing. The first issue that they did 2 years ago was $25 million. There was so much demand in the market for this, they sold out in 48 hours. I mean, this is easy money if we can get our politicians to pay attention to this. Number 7, state networks. Now, I do appreciate that it may be hard work for one city or one county in Maryland, whether it's Tacoma Park or Montgomery County, to do these kinds of green bonds. Fine. Let's create a state entity that does this on behalf of cities and counties. So you have one kind of legal document that serves as a framework for all of the participating jurisdictions underneath. Makes it a lot more efficient. But we have to get the state to start paying attention to this. Number 8, a tax credit. So about 6 years ago, the Canadian province of New Brunswick passed an amazing tax credit. They basically said, we're going to give every resident of New Brunswick, there's about 1 million people who live in New Brunswick, we're going to give them a 50% state tax credit for every dollar they invest in locally owned business. What an amazing incentive that is. Well, we have taken this around to a bunch of states in the US, and sadly, the state that has expressed the greatest interest in doing this is not Maryland, it's Michigan. And this is a leading Republican lawmaker in the state of Michigan 2 years ago who introduced the legislation to do a 50% tax credit there. It got support in both houses, but then the Republicans lost power. So now the Democrats are reintroducing the legislation, which underscores one point that I want to make. These measures are extremely bipartisan. Everyone loves local investment. And imagine doing this in the state of Maryland. In fact, even though I don't live in the state of Maryland, I seem to still be paying taxes here for various transactions. And I would really appreciate this kind of tax credit. Number 9, local banking. So again, I did the survey here and we revealed that only a small fraction of you are banking in locally owned banks or credit unions. Now, I appreciate that it's hard to find a locally owned bank or credit union these days, especially in the Washington, D.C. area. But here's what we know. A dollar that goes into a locally owned bank or credit union is 3 times more likely to find itself in a loan to a local business than a dollar put on deposit in a large-scale bank. That's a huge difference. We should be supporting local banks not only individually, but as jurisdictions, right? The city of Tacoma Park should be running all of its accounts through a local bank and credit union. The county of Montgomery should be running all of its accounts through local banks and credit unions. And instead, we're running these things through big banks. Now, people say instinctively, oh, there's no way you can do this. There's no way you can administer a big public institution in a small bank. That's nonsense. And if you want to see how it's done, look at Phoenix and look at Tucson, because these are 2 big Arizona cities that move their banking out of big commercial banks into local banks for precisely this reason. Number 10, public banking. Now, public banking is widely misunderstood. Public banking is often understood as, oh, a public agency is setting up a bunch of bank accounts online that compete with big banks. And you could do that, but that's not really what we mean by public banking. North Dakota set up its public bank in about, I think it was 1913. And what they do is any jurisdiction has money coming in and going out. Usually the money's coming in from taxpayers and it's coming in from transfer payments from other levels of government, maybe the federal government. And then the jurisdiction puts that money in JP Morgan Chase. And you never see the money until you need it, and then you pull it out. So that money is doing a lot of good in Malaysia. What North Dakota does is it puts the money on deposit in local banks and credit unions in North Dakota. So it expands the credit availability for local businesses in North Dakota. And in fact, the local business health indicators in North Dakota are about the best in the country, thanks to this. Not only does this institution not cost money for North Dakota, it has made North Dakota $1 billion since it came into effect. So why aren't we doing it? It's so obviously a good thing to do for the economy, and it makes money. Well, California has bested you folks in Maryland, and we are doing it in a bunch of cities there. And the enabling legislation in California was passed about 2 years ago, and there are initiatives in Los Angeles and in San Francisco and in the East Bay to create community banks. But we need this kind of legislation in Maryland, and we need it fast. Number 11, stay trading portals. So I thought I would call out Lori Charkoudian's importance in helping Maryland, this is before she was even a politician, in helping to create the only grassroots investment bill that allows us to put $100 into any company very easily in the state. But it's just a local transaction. But people are not really taking as good advantage of it as they should be. But I think that, you are onto the right idea with this, and I think there is a way that we can reinvigorate it. And the way to do that is we could create portals, websites within Maryland to facilitate these kinds of investments. It's hard for businesses to just do them with their customers at the checkout counter, But if we could create websites in Maryland that do the same thing as the federal portals, it would work. We could, and the problem is that every state, including Maryland, only allows broker-dealers, which are really obscure and not that interested in this, to do this, only allows broker-dealers to set up these websites. At the federal level, we allow civilians and grassroots groups to set up these kinds of investment portals. The easy solution, we pass a law in Maryland to allow grassroots groups to set up portals. And then your law will be used a lot more. Number 12, online discussions. So you may think you live in a country with free speech, but when it comes to local investment, we all live under various kinds of gag orders. And it is really shocking how little communication is technically legal between companies and investors. The SEC recently recognized this problem with investment crowdfunding, and they allowed a pretty good process for you to basically register with the SEC that you want to have conversations. It's called testing the waters. And once you finish this little piece of paper, you can do on a website good conversations. The problem is they failed to preempt all of the competing state laws. So it's not happening. We could preempt those laws in Maryland and just simply rewrite the Maryland laws about communication with investment to look identical with the federal government, and we're home free, and we can start to have conversations about investment online. Let me just wrap up this list of 12 ideas by just making, I think, some obvious points about them. Number one, these ideas are not controversial. They are, to the idea, every single one of them is easily sold to conservatives and progressives. They're not pie in the sky. They exist somewhere. They just don't exist in Maryland right now. They are all cheap. Even the tax credit is pretty cheap. We know from a similar tax credit in Nova Scotia that the cost of lost government money per job over Nova Scotia's investment laws and tax credits is about $500 per job. This state was prepared to do 1,000 times as much per job for Amazon. So I think this is a real bargain in terms of facilitating local investment. These ideas also open up new finance pools for doing what we know needs to be done without raising taxes. And I think it's important to say that none of this stuff is being carried by economic development agencies right now, which are still weirdly obsessed with attract and retain of outside corporations, a strategy that is a proven loser. This is a strategy that's a proven winner. And in order to achieve it, it just requires some focus. So here's where I want to leave you. I want to leave you with Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And you may recall that after Indiana Jones suffered through snakes and terrorists and fires and bullets, he comes to the crypt where the Holy Grail supposedly is. And there's a 500-year-old guardian there who says, Indiana, your last task will be to choose among these 50 goblets and choose the goblet from which Christ drank. Choose wisely. Well, at that point, this guy, the German spy, steps forward and says, I know which one Christ would have drunk from. It would have been the most ornate. He drinks from it, and he spontaneously combusts. And the 500-year-old guardian says, he chose poorly. honestly, we are all choosing poorly right now. And what I am inviting us to do as individuals and as residents of the most forward-thinking jurisdictions in the United States, apply our imagination to the world of local investment, and it will help unlock the solutions for lots and lots of problems. Thank you very much. Okay, great.
So if anyone has questions,
Questions or comments or?
raise your hand and,
Yes, sir.
gentleman has a microphone here.
Thank you for the great presentation. So I have two questions basically, but maybe you could answer only one, that's fine, because of the lack of time. So what could be the main challenge of local economy? That's one question. Another one, you talked about green bonds. So could you please talk a little bit more about this?
Yes.
How they are different than other bonds?
Right. So on the issue of local economy, the first one, say a little bit more. Are you particularly want to talk more about why we should do local investment, or why local businesses matter, or what's your
What's the main challenge?
the main challenge? Okay. Listen, you saw the main challenge. The main challenge is, we all know, as Tababu said, follow your wallet. And we're doing that increasingly with buy local and purchasing, but we're not doing it at all with our investment. So the challenge is that we don't behave in accordance with our values, and we need to bring those together. And I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying that you can just change it by tweaking a few laws, but it requires a long-term mobilization. So that's what these 12 ideas are all about. And I should mention, so Tababu alluded to the fact that I came from Europe. So I was in Europe this last week at a conference in Bristol, UK called Planet Local. And there were 500 localists there from all over the world. Everyone is really interested in this local investment question. But when I asked the same two questions to them in that audience, I got the same responses. So this is a universal problem. It's not a Maryland problem, it's not a US problem, it's a universal problem that we have to unlock how to do local investment more creatively. On your second question, the difference between normal municipal bonds, vanilla flavored, let's call them, and green flavored municipal bonds is two things. It is the size, and it's who can buy them. So the way a typical municipal bond works is that the city or the county or the state has a relationship with a big investment banking firm, could be Goldman Sachs, and they then prepare the bond issue to go out into the world, the publicly traded world, and people all over the planet hold these bonds, and the city can raise some money. Very good way for raising money. By the way, a lot of cities internationally don't have this power that we have in the US, so thank you for having this power. We just have to exercise it with some prudence. The second thing, though, is that these bonds invariably are issued at a level where, you know, if you don't have $50,000 or $100,000, you can't buy them. So what Connecticut has done, inspired by the sale of war bonds that FDR did in World War II, is say we're going to allow grassroots people to buy these bonds, and we're going to set the level of bond. I think they set it at $1,000. Now they still want to figure out how to bring it down further than that, but I think if you allow grassroots people to buy it, and you set a level that's reasonable, they will come.
Thank you.
They can be tax exempt. So there's two types of municipal bonds out there. Some are tax exempt, some are not. It depends a little bit on their riskiness. And I can't recall whether these particular ones that they did were tax exempt. Yeah.
A comment and a paradox. No, I don't need that. Not enough. The comment is the reason that there's little or no local banking anymore is the local bank, and you lived around here, was Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
And they were bought out by Capital One.
Right.
And B.F. Saul is still a large landowner in the area. So there has been a dramatic consolidation in the banking industry over the last 5 to 10 years. And to the tune that over the last annual period, many mid-sized banks have gone close to bankruptcy, if not been liquidated.
Yep.
So that's one dilemma. When the city did a study on banking in sustainable groupings, there was I don't remember, and there were some people here, I never remember hearing any discussion of local banking, encouraging it, or seeking it out. And the paradox is that people might be willing, and you can explain how this would work, in investing in something like this, but the dilemma is always the safety of their investment. An entrepreneur, his safety, his backup is his sweat equity. His or her sweat equity, excuse me, ladies, is their sweat equity. As a person who ran a business for 5-8 years, okay, I walked away with money, but I'm telling you, when push came to shove, when the wind was blowing, it was 12 degrees, I was the one on the windy side of the roof, okay? And that's what the local entrepreneur, now the way you the question is, how do you motivate regular people to invest in people that they don't know? Therefore, it seems to me that the safety factor, and this is how Trump got rich, was government investing. His father got rich on government housing in New York City. And so if people are to invest in some kind of group like this, they're gonna need to feel a substantial level of security from somewhere. Munis offer this, and there may be something in the background that I didn't hear, but as a person who might be interested, people always want the safety of their investment.
Yeah, I totally agree. So lots to say about that. First thing I'll say is you're absolutely right about the trend in banking. And I consider one of the reasons for this the misnamed Community Reinvestment Act, because the Community Reinvestment Act passed in the 1970s basically said to bigger banks, well, we will only let you do mergers and acquisitions and interstate banking if you perform somewhat well in reinvesting a little bit of money in your community. And it was a very low bar. So they did that, and then they've just gobbled up everything in sight. So it should have been called the Banking Consolidation Permission Slip Act, right? And so we are getting what we sowed. That said, there still exist some banks, some small banks around the country, some small credit unions, and they are worth our taking a look at. And I know how difficult it is to find them in DC. It's not impossible. There are a couple around here, but it's tougher here than in other places. The second thing I'll say is you're absolutely right that local investors should not be taking unreasonable risks. One of the things that I'll point out is that if you ask an investment advisor, your investment advisor, I am thinking of putting a little bit of money, Andy Shalal down the street here, he's thinking of doing another Busboys and Poets, and maybe, in this case, he's doing Grassroots Capital. Should I put money into it? And your investment advisor who knows nothing about Andy will say, all local businesses fail, don't do that. Now, it's not true that all local businesses fail. It's true that a majority of local business startups fail, but I didn't give you a startup, I gave you an established business. So the first lesson for local investors is to distinguish between startups, which are very risky, and established businesses with great track records. The second thing is thinking about what is the security that those businesses have. Some businesses have real estate holdings, and that makes it a somewhat safer investment. The other thing that I would remind you is that there are ways in which local investment reduces risk, and there are ways in which it increases risk. So we've just talked about, yeah, there are some ways that local investment might increase your risk, but local investment also reduces your risk because you have a chance to personally inspect the business and ground truth what's being presented to you in a way that we never could with Enron. And that just makes an enormous difference. We know from community banking, where there is the ability of community banks through relationships to really figure out who they're going to do their lending to, they have much lower default rates than bigger banks with computerized credit scores. So relationships really matter, and local investment invites you to do that kind of relationship building with local businesses. That said, I appreciate that it takes time and energy to do this well. It's better to do it in a group like a Lion. It's better still to do it in a fund that helps to diversify your risk and do some of the work for you.
Can I just talk? I have a real quick comment. I think it's accurate to say that the major economic activity in the city of Tacoma Park is housing. Buying, selling, renting, building, etc. I almost didn't come tonight. That would have been a grave mistake. I'm excited by what you're saying, and I see an incredible opportunity because there's been a recent debate, I won't go into it or how it arose, about affordable housing in Tacoma Park. This is a clear path on how to meet that social goal. That's all I want to say. I see a lot of elected people here. I even voted for some of you, although I don't know what I don't know what the hell I was thinking at the time. But in all seriousness, to those of you who are elected officials, please pick up on this idea. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think this is what I'm seeing across the country. First of all, on the portals, there is this subtle shift from investment in just blue sky businesses in general to more real estate oriented companies. And then in the investment fund universe, yeah, there's a growing interest in these diversified community investment funds, which are real estate funds. So I think they are very important potential solutions to the affordable housing issues you're facing.
I guess I'm curious on the business side of things. There's the investor side, say on the business side of things, when working with local businesses, is there kind of a different playbook, set of technical assistance that you need to provide to kind of prepare those businesses to accept local investment, to kind of be responsive to local investors? What should you be looking for, and what kind of resources should cities be providing?
Yes. Well, at one level, it is the same, which is you want a business with a good business design. Some people do that in their head, some people do it on paper, but whatever it is, you need a strong business at its core. But there are specific items that are a checklist if you're going to do investment crowdfunding. And I have a couple of videos in that Main Street Journal video section that are for businesses and sort of lay out, how you need to prepare your finances and how you should prepare your company and what are the very specific thing that you need to think about if you're going to do investment crowdfunding as a business is finding the crowd. So if you have like 3 customers because you've just existed on paper, investment crowdfunding doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you have a list of several thousand customers and supporters and fans, this could be a bonanza for you in terms of finding investment. So most of the people who will buy your securities, if you put it on a federal portal, will be the people you bring to the party. So that is the unique thing that you have to work with a company to do, is to be successful, develop and work your crowd. Often it's for a couple of months before you can get successfully across the finish line.
Does anyone else have a question?
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, it's a lot of food for thought, and really thank you, Mr. Schuman, for being here tonight, coming from Europe across the big water and riding the train down here to be with us. Let's see another round of applause for Mr. Schuman. All right, before I continue, I did want to recognize that our another city council member, Cindy Dybala, is here with us tonight. There she is in the back. Thank you for coming. And also Peter Kovar, who was on the council in the past and who Mr. Gagliardo maybe had voted for. Thank you for coming tonight, Peter. Oh, hi, Randy. So Randy Gibson's also with us tonight. He's on the city council, first term this year. Thank you for coming. All right, I appreciate that. And now what we'd like to do is move on to our panel discussion. And so I'd like to call Delegate Lorig Cherkoutian to come to the table first. Lorig is a committed Maryland State delegate, tirelessly works to represent the interests and aspirations of her constituents. With a notable career in public service, her initiatives have continually aimed at bridging the gaps between policy and the people it serves. Today, she brings her legislative acumen and a deep understanding of the socioeconomic dynamics at play within the state of Maryland, providing a substantial backdrop for today's discussion. Welcome. Okay. And I thought you would have some beginning comments, and then we'll introduce the remaining panel members.
Oh, you want me to speak before we bring them up? Okay. Sure. Let me just transparently, I'm not totally clear on time, so you want me to take a few minutes now, or? 3
to 5. We have plenty of time tonight.
Okay.
And I do want the spotlight to be on you right now.
Oh,
Thank
wow,
you.
okay. Well, it is. Hi, everyone, again. Great, so I want to talk about a couple things. I actually want to start by saying a few things about, I really appreciate Michael and I have been in what I would say is an ongoing conversation now for about 10 years. Sometimes with a little more of a gap between when we're able to talk back and forth, but it's a thrill to have him here, so welcome back, and thank you for making the time to be here. To Babu, my cousin, and I have also been in ongoing conversation. Fortunately, that one includes a lot of coffee and really delicious food as well, so bonus on that one. And I do spend a lot of time really working to translate conversations that I have in the community with policy making, trying to find ways to give voice to community members in Annapolis, trying to find ways to explain and bring new ideas to Annapolis. And so part of what I had hoped to talk about tonight was a different piece of infrastructure, of really public and shared infrastructure that can help really support small businesses, in particular in the food area, which is where I've done a lot of my work, to engage in larger markets. And I do want to talk about that. This is why I apologize for not fully tracking which piece of the agenda we're doing when. But before I get to that, I actually want to respond to, I want to take the opportunity to talk about engaging policymakers, because I think there's like extraordinary, really good ideas, and then I think sometimes it's hard to understand when you're looking at stuff that seems really obvious why that isn't passing. And so it's really, I think, like I talk about democracy as an ongoing conversation. And so a lot of times I'm sort of hearing the feedback and trying to implement it in Annapolis, and I do, and I will continue to do that. But I also really think it's important for folks who are as passionate as the folks who are here tonight to have a really good understanding of some of what's going on in Annapolis, because it's really important that we see this work as part of ongoing movements for social justice. And what we know about ongoing movements for social justice is that they really take movements. They take people's movements, that the changes that have happened in our world has been, when we look at the major changes in terms of abolition, in terms of women's rights, in terms of civil rights, in terms of LGBTQ rights, and in terms of economic empowerment, they happen because of people's movements. And so that means organizing across the entire state and really thinking about where are the other folks in this state who have an interest, because you have, there's bills along the lines of some of the things that were talked about, public banking in particular, that have gone down in my committee on a vote of 21-1, where I've been the only one vote that voted in favor of it. So I don't mind being that vote. It's not my favorite place to be, but I don't mind it. But that doesn't really move us along in the process. And there were public banking, and this may come as a surprise to folks who are watching this and having this conversation and being like, well, this is obvious, like this is so clear. Like, there were public banking task forces, so not even creating a public bank, just a study of a public banking, bill to study public banking in Maryland that lost 21-1 in my committee, that got buried in the drawer in my committee, that was considered so dangerous by, and I encourage you to like watch these hearings, because you can see me engaging with the head of the Banking Association for the state of Maryland about why is it so frightening to study this. He's at the table talking about how this will be the end of credit and the end of banking for the state of Maryland if we pass the study bill. So I think that sort of level of dialogue and the way that those conversations happen in Annapolis might be surprising to people. When I did work on the bill that Mike talked about before I was elected, I actually took the time in Annapolis to meet one-on-one with each of the 22 people on the committee that I now sit on. Extensive time, one-on-one with each of them, to really explain to them. And it's a relatively, that particular bill, it's the one that allows for $100 investments from everyday people without it having to go through any sort of SEC or Maryland Securities Commission screening. It's worth just, so that relatively simple bill that we ended up passing, bipartisan, still took this extraordinary effort of like that one-on-one, and still people were suspicious. And it also took a ton of time and effort with the Maryland Securities folks who were in the Attorney General's office. And I say that to say, I think it is important to remember, that the reason, ironically, all the rules that we're up against right now were theoretically put in place to protect consumers. And we need to protect consumers. We need rules to protect consumers. The irony is just that the Amazons of the world and the JP Morgans of the world and all these other big companies of the world can screw consumers left and right, and we watch these like massive crises that have come from the absolute greed of these multinational corporations, and consumers are not protected. Then banks are bailed out and consumers are not protected. But at their core, a lot of these rules came about to protect consumers. And so then when we come in with another set of rules and we're like, okay, we're not going to have those screenings, we're not going to have registration, we're not going to have, you have people who are well-meaning in the Attorney General's office, for example, in Maryland, saying, well, wait a second, how are we protecting consumers? And so then it is necessary to do that work with them to say, we can have both. We don't actually have to choose. How do we protect consumers and make sure that the money is floating, is circling in our, recirculating in our local economies? But that's the effort, that's the work, that's the time that it takes. And so what I really want to do, what I hope the takeaway is not just why these bills haven't passed, because it is shameful that they haven't. Like, we need to do this work. But really, I hope it's a call to action, and a call to action specifically beyond just right here in Tacoma Park. I mean, I think there's a lot of things we can model here in Tacoma Park, and it's exciting to see so many elected officials from Tacoma Park here. But a call to action, certainly thinking about what can we model in Tacoma Park, because many of the examples that Mike gave are actually municipal examples across this country. What can we model in Montgomery County, but then also how can we start thinking of who the allies are across the state that can start doing the organizing work in Annapolis that really can start to educate folks so that we have that sort of groundswell that ultimately is the thing that starts to shift policy. And so I want to talk about public infrastructure later once we have the rest of the panel up here, and I'm happy to take questions at any time about really how do we move the way that policymakers think about this stuff.
Thank you so much, and sorry to put you on the spot, but
No, it's fine.
we love having you here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now if I could ask the other panel members to come up, Jim Schulman and Hem Takala. Yes. Come on up, have a seat. Jim is a dedicated advocate for bolstering the regional alliances, serving as a cornerstone at the Alliance for Regional Cooperation. With a rich background in fostering collaborative relationships among local governments, businesses, and civic groups, he brings a wealth of knowledge aimed at driving sustainable regional growth. His insights today promise to shed light on the synergies that can be tapped when communities band together towards common economic and social goals. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And before you start, let me also introduce Hem. Okay. Hem Takala stands at the forefront of innovative educational practices as a revered educator at Montgomery County Public Schools Summer Rise program. His holistic approach towards education, coupled with a passion for nurturing the next generation of thinkers, is notable. His discourse today is anticipated to delve into the transformative power of education and its critical role in shaping our youth.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Schulman, if you would go ahead, and then I'm going to ask Tababu Asefa to come up and moderate the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a total honor to be up here with Lori, and I consider her a food rock star. So on regenerative food issues, and so it's a total honor. And since it hasn't been mentioned, I think it's important that we recognize that we're gathering on a holiday. At one point in my youth, I lived in Columbus, Ohio, where it actually was Columbus Day was a municipal holiday. So I was used to having that, and then I know that there's certain agencies and states that don't recognize the federal Columbus holiday, and we now have Indigenous Peoples Day. And I think that maybe it's useful for me just to mention, as happens in so many meetings these days, that we are on land, to acknowledge that we're on land that used to be part of the Piscataway and Anacostan and Powhatan kingdoms, and these were peoples and are peoples who did and sometimes still speak Algonquin. And but that's part of recognizing that we're also ultimately all of us children of Africa historically, and this relates to me as someone who didn't even realize until 2022 that I was Ukrainian American. I knew my grandpa was from Romania and I knew my grandma was from Russia, but it wasn't until 2022 I looked on the map and saw that indeed their towns were in what is now Ukraine. So I actually think we're all Ukrainians and Africans. We're all connected. And as for why we're here, this isn't just about sort of extending business as usual. This is about making, for me, business extraordinary. It's the difference between just recognizing business as something transactional, and the whole B Corp and Benefit Corp movements to uplift and celebrate people and build equity and equality and heal generations of wounds, seen and unseen. And that's part of the reason that a business I founded, and ran for 12 years called Community Forklift was named as it is because it was about lifting up communities. And although we saw when we had the opportunity, I think after 2012, to become a benefit corporation, we certainly qualified. We met all the criteria, but we didn't go ahead and do it at that time because we felt like, hey, we're already a zero waste business, reselling used building materials, and we're already a net zero energy business, actually using less energy than was being saved through the process of these purchases. So I would say it's important to recognize that the way business is conducted impacts our land, air, and water, and our built environment, and other people and other creatures. And so what ultimately is the true repository of wealth is what we preserve. That's what I would argue. And no company balance sheet is really going to matter in the long run. And so the bigger question is, are we conducting our businesses with integrity and with community integrity in mind? Are we allowing nature to do what it does best, to grow and evolve and astound us? Did we open our minds up to allow our neighbors' teenagers to be able to find summer work in our businesses? And local businesses actually tend to do that. I was hesitating to mention this, but it turned my head around. I recently read a book by a scholar named Bruno Latour, and he's a philosopher and sociologist who passed away last year, but he rocked my socks off by explaining something that I could never understand, which is that nature and culture are two sides of the same coin. And you can say, how can that be? Nature is generally something that we think of as in the background, that is those things that human activity happens in front of. It's kind of like a stage set. And how can culture be part of nature? But it is. Because of human influences and in the Anthropocene age that we're living in, where human activity is affecting the geology, we have to recognize that human culture is part of nature, and nature ought to be part of our culture. So forgive me for waxing quite philosophic here, but I would say the important takeaway is that we must be vigilant and speak up for nature's rights and human rights and cultural rights and individual rights and community benefits. Many of the folks here actually know more about entrepreneurship than I do. I will just mention, though, that the Alliance for Regional Cooperation, a nonprofit that I run, is focused on regional economic development. And I would say that as important as it is for the municipalities and the counties and the states and countries all over the world to get this local investment thing right, that we'll have made a difference in this region when we are able to do it regionally, because the economic region here it crosses the Potomac Ocean. So we have a more difficult task ahead of us. But if Maryland passes that law, these sets of improvements, I suspect that DC and Virginia won't be that far behind. So to Babu, very clearly, Maryland has the potential to get back in the driver's seat. So I think that's probably enough. I'll just say the two main things that the Alliance for Regional Cooperation is working on is to create that potlatch, that potluck dinner, to bring small businesses that might be cooperatives, they might be social enterprises, or they may just be, small businesses that aren't yet benefit corporations, but bring them together to be able to figure out ways to obtain the goods and services they need to run their businesses from each other and get investment from their customers. So that's probably way over my 5 minutes.
All right. Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you for joining us.
So I think I'm okay with our slide. Yes, my name is Hem Dhakal. I'm restating my name again. I was born in a remote part of Nepal, surrounded by dense forest and with cobra, tiger, cheetah, and you name it. It's a very pristine forest, stream on the north side, and so many rivers around. Always, I never forget my village. I find that connection to my village. So I'm a child entrepreneur. I call it chicken boy to doctor boy. Now people call me doctor boy. Chicken boy. All villagers call me chicken boy because I used to have chicken. It's a kind of interesting story. I don't want to go in detail. Tebabu will tell me finish in time. So when I was about 7 or 8 years old, I would invest in chicken egg. I would go to my neighbor, and who are, all of them are farmer, by the way. And I would say, you know what? I want to invest in the egg. Okay, it's about like 1 cent. That is 10 Nepalese rupees. And then after eggs are hatched, they would give me 1 chicken or 2 chickens, in 20 rupees. So after, this 1 or 2 chicks make hundreds of chicken after few months. So, and then I had tons of money. In the village, there is nothing to spend. You have money, but you cannot spend money. So my friend asked me, you know what? Your grandfather is rich, that's why you have money. I said, no, I know how to make money. And then they asked me, how? And I taught them that entrepreneurial skills, how they can raise chickens, very simple. And in fact, I gave some money to my grandfather instead of asking money from him. So that's my childhood story a little bit. There is a long story, I don't want to go in detail. So then I came to the United States. That's in the second slide, by the way. So I came to study peace studies and conflict transformation. I got some scholarship. Then I founded a whole social benefit LLC. Thank you so much for passing this legislation. It really benefited me. So what we did was we purchased handicraft from Nepal, from the least privileged women, and then we sold in the United States. And then the money, little money, whatever whole social benefit LLC made, we sent back to Nepal so that their children can go to school. So it was really fulfilling for me because when I heard their stories, how they are going to school, they have food to eat, I was really happy about it. And then I did my doctoral dissertation, and I particularly focus on how benefit organizations fulfill their social, economic, and ecological mission. And then also recently, I don't want to go again detail, we don't have time. I recently hosted Summarize program. This is the MCPS program. I hosted 10 students from different schools, more than 10 schools. And they learn valuable life skills. I would say peace skills or ecopreneurial skills. Ecopreneurial means ecological entrepreneurial skills. They also learn how to collaborate, how to solve problems, how to think creatively, and all other, I call them peace skills or soft skills. So that's what they learn. And then at the end of the program, that was 1.5 month program, I invited them to join
eco tank for ecopreneurs, and they came up with a brilliant problem and solution. And some of them are, for example, I remember their names. For example, Leo came with glowing globes, and he said, I want to innovate this product. He has a perfect, very detail-oriented plan. And Christine came with Forest Friend. She wanted to collaborate with the YMCA school system. And then Sarah came with Style Up. She wants to change the concept of recycle. She wants to upcycle, meaning, for example, old cloth. When I asked her, why do you want to do it, Sarah? She said, you know what? Your best is in wardrobe, extra best or something you just want to throw. And then you can make a piece of, like a beautiful piece of art, for example, bag, handmade bags. So, and then based on my doctoral dissertation, based on my published research articles, based on my lifelong educator journey, which I taught from pre-K to PhD level student, and also based on my not only like a academic type of experience, my real life experience, I envision an ecopreneurship and peace academy. The pilot project I did, I can extend to the next level. Basically, as most of you know, that in school system, there is a lack of like entrepreneurial skill they don't teach, like financial skill they don't teach. In fact, my daughter is 17-year-old. She says, Baba means dad. She says, you know what? I'm not learning this at school. Can you please teach me? It's a long story. I don't want to go again in that detail. And same thing with my 11-year-old son. He also asked the same sort of question. All 10 students, they asked the similar sort of questions. We are not learning these skills here. Dr. Thakal, please help. I did my best. And then, as you know, there is a economy and ecology going in divergent direction, into different direction. I believe that there should be love affair, if not marriage, between economy and ecology. Because that's the main problem. You can see the climate, the ppm label 470.06 based on the climate.gov report. And also in schools, violent 1.4 million violent incident in a school. So we have to address this type of issue. So that they could become not only, let's say, problem maker, as well teenagers are called labeled as problem maker. They can be problem solver. They can be not only problem solver, they can be job provider or entrepreneur, not job seekers. So that can be done. So I believe that why one Drayton, why only one Gandhi, one Mandela, one Mathai, or you name it, there are so many other names I don't read. Why only one? Why could not there be 10 or 100, or why not 1,000, why not millions? I think it's possible. I strongly believe that it's possible based on my experience and based on what I did. And also, I believe that if we work together as a community, as a global citizen, we can do it. Maybe one small scale here and there in many, maybe one in Africa or in the Maryland, in Takoma Park, in many other part, in Nepal, we can do it. And I believe that there is no any if and no any buts. It should be must, in my opinion. And also, time is not tomorrow, not yesterday. Yesterday already gone. Tomorrow, what we can do? Time is now. So if not us, who will do it? Yeah. We have to do it, and also we have to do it now. That's what I think. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ham. That's wonderful. Before I get to before I moderate the panel, I'd like to go back to Mike's presentation. I've read that 12 action, I don't know how many times, but he gave it life. And the point I'm trying to make, I want you to say thank you to him. He took his time, he's not paid, he's been communicating with us. Our communication was combobulated because everybody's busy. It's been over 6 months, and the only way you're gonna thank him, I want each and every one of you to buy his book. That's for two reasons. He's not trying to sell, he's trying a movement. The movement starts by buying the book, and we're going to start a local, by the way, put your name on the list. We're going to have a local conversation called Mobilizing Marylanders for Local Investment. We're going to have a conversation and see where we can take this thing further. So we're going to start by reading his book. So thank him by buying and signing and to join us. Okay, now let me go back to my panel. I'm a storyteller. I like to tell a story. In fact, my background is communication. And Loring and I met Loring when she first ran for the Tacoma Park City Council. And we've been friends since then. And she dragged me a couple of times to Annapolis to testify on her local, when she was an activist, not even our delegate, to have that local investing put into law. And after that, I've seen her walking the talk and working really, really hard. I'm saying that for a reason. But her effort is not going to materialize unless we back her up with support. I'm going to wrap it up at the closing remark. So, and next, Jim and I, we just recently met, but I've been an admirer of his forklift, community forklift. And Ham, there's a story to tell actually, I was going to say it to introduce him. 2016, I got a random phone call. So the guy on the other line said, "Oh, Tubabu, I read about your story online. I'm interested in doing my PhD on benefit cooperation. Can I come interview you?" I'm like, well, I'm struggling to, there's nothing to share. You know, I wanted to send him the link. And then at second, when I knew he was from Nepal, I said, oh, another soul. So I welcomed him, we talked. And 3 weeks ago, he shot an email to me and said, I've done my doctorate on PhD, I've written a book, and I have, okay. And then he said he had a summer program with the Maryland Public School and had youth to work. I'm like, oh my God, that seat was mine. I gave it to him because he has a fresh and wonderful story. The point I'm trying to make, from individual to localities, it takes each and every one of us, it takes each localities to build local economy in a global scale. When I first met Michael said to me, I'm into local economy, you know, there's nothing I can do for you. I'm like, what are you talking about? The global economy has to be chained with local economies. From Ethiopia all the way here, unless we have that sustainable local economy doing the change. Right now we have big corporations running the chain, and they have a nice hold on us. So we have to start locally. We have to connect on an individual level, on a local municipality level, and retake. I'll come back to that point later on in the closing remarks. So that said, Loring, I'm going to come to you. Could you please tell a story on why and how you got involved in the community kitchen, because that's what matters at the end of the day. It changed people's life. Yep. Can you tell that story, why and where that project is?
Yeah, I will, and actually thank you, because that gets actually to where I'm hoping to go over the next few years. So okay. I'll give that history and then where we are, where we're going. So how many folks are familiar with Crossroads Community Food Network? Raise your hand if you're, okay, lots of folks, and then other people who we need to get you to the best farmers market in the world. So to Crossroads Community Farmers Market, and this is sort of really important on this piece about what does social justice look like? What does it look like to take care of people's needs today, while we are also building a new kind of economy where the economy itself takes care of everybody's needs, sort of where Terry started us off. So Crossroads Community Food Network, the farmers market, was the first in the country to double federal nutrition benefits at farmers markets, which means you spend $5 on your SNAP benefit, you get $10 worth of produce. So in doing that, it was a farmers market that was really catered to placing itself and being successful in an area that would otherwise be a food desert, and also really catering to making sure that people who are really struggling to make ends meet were having access to healthy, fresh food. That also takes SNAP dollars plus the double benefit and puts it back into local farmers' pockets, which continues this piece about the multiplier effect of taking all the money, the federal benefit money, the state benefit money, and putting it in the pockets of local businesses, in this case farmers. But as we're doing that work and we're doing outreach to folks who are food insecure and using SNAP benefits, people are saying, look, I've got these skills, right? I've got the skills to cook. I've got the skills to make salsa. I've got the skills to make pupusas. I've got the skills to make these specialty chocolates. I've got these skills. And what I really don't have is access to a commercial kitchen. Commercial kitchens are very expensive to get access to. And I don't have, and so these folks who have extraordinary talent, they're working minimum wage jobs or 3 or 4 jobs, kids, single parents, and they just don't have the $500 a month, $1,000 a month, the capital to get into some of these other kitchens. And so what we said was what we needed was, it was clear in this region, what we needed was kitchens that were easily accessible to folks who had these skills, who had the commitment, but didn't have the capital to get started. And so it's sort of a flip on, we need to get people capital eventually, that's where some of the investing comes in, but we also need the infrastructure for folks who maybe don't start out with that capital. And so we built initially the shared use community kitchen that's right now in the Tacoma Park Presbyterian Church, and the model was that people would be able to have access on a sliding scale with scholarships to be able to use this kitchen. That's the infrastructure. And out of it, people are starting food businesses, getting support in their businesses, getting, in some cases, connected to other capital, and then growing their businesses and graduating out of there. And we started that in, gosh, these things always take so much longer than you think they are. I think we started working on it in 2013, maybe. It opened in 2016, 18. But here's an exciting thing. How many folks are familiar with Mark's Kitchen, which is now closed and like one of our favorites? But the restaurant that's going to go into Mark's Kitchen started a number of years ago in the community kitchen, expanded to a food truck, and is now going into Mark's Kitchen. And so when we talk about how do we really do this grassroots growing from a... Thank you.
It's a lot of work.
How do you grow from your community into becoming now a Main Street business, and hopefully we'll have a chance to invest in that business, our financial capital, as well as this other program. That's the kind of thing that becomes possible. And sure, there's businesses that didn't make it along the way. There's businesses that got started and said, this isn't for me. There's other businesses that actually grew and have sold their businesses, and they're in certainly the co-op, in Whole Foods, have their food trucks, have moved on to other places. So that's one piece, and that's a value-added piece. The other piece that I'm working on right now that I think is really important, and this is another way to think about what are the roles of state policy to drive a local economy, is also in the food area, which is local food procurement. And so I passed a law a few years ago that requires every state agency. So there's state agencies that buy a lot of food, right? There's the Department of Corrections buys a lot of food. The Department of Health has 26 hospitals. There's the university system that buys a lot of food. So all this food, and the vast majority of that food, like 99.9% of it, is being trucked in from California and Mexico, where workers are being exploited, where the environment is being exploited, where it's massive corporations, where it's this extraction economy. And meanwhile, here in Maryland, we're talking about we want to preserve agriculture, and we have an ag reserve here in Montgomery County. And so we, in some ways, invest some of our money in preserving agriculture in grants, and then we take all the money as a state that we're buying food, and we send it, to these massive commercial, corporate, multinational corporations in the food system that is destructive to our health and our economies and to workers. And so what we did in this bill is we said, okay, the goal is 20% of local food, 20% of the food we buy is going to be grown in Maryland. And we knew we're not even close to that. But what we had to do was sort of force the procurement process to start to engage with local farmers. And we knew once we forced the procurement process to do that, it would get stuck. Because what we know is the procurement processes are not designed to engage with 15 different farmers to buy the apples that are needed for this month for the prison system, or the apples that are needed this month for the school system. But we had to sort of force a change in the procurement system so that then we could create the need for the infrastructure system. And so parallel to forcing this change in the procurement system, we've started building the infrastructure for the possibility of aggregation and distribution that will allow multiple small farmers to aggregate with one essentially distribution system that we're still working on the specifics of whether it's going to be a co-op, which it could be, or a nonprofit, or a B corporation, which it's likely to be, actually, and 4P Foods, which is the model that's in the region overall, and we're engaging with them. So there's details of how we structure it, but it's all the stuff that we've been talking about. And so that system, as we build it, is going to be this combination of the state's buying power, sort of the institutional guarantee that we can make, can drive more farming of table crops and more value added of table crops if we create this infrastructure, because all of the infrastructure in our food system has been built on this extraction economy. And we're now in this place where we're trying to build, we talked a lot about the extractive economy of the banking systems. That's kind of this piece that we've been talking about. But we can look at that similar thing in other sorts of industries, and the food system is one of them. And this is one of the ways that we're working right now. And we sort of started by changing procurement, and now we're working on the infrastructure over the next couple of years. We should see a real change in that, and we're hoping that that becomes a shift. And then within all of that, of course, is the role for the B Corps, and within all of that are the roles for then the more investment into the various pieces of this puzzle.
Good, thank you. Jim, could you take a personal story? Can you tell us what is the story that personally you took that inspired you or made you think of the word itself, Regional Alliance Cooperation? So can you tell us that story? How did you put it together? Where are you at? What's your vision? And a personal story.
Yeah, it's embarrassing because I'm not sure I know my own path here. But let me see, can I work backwards?
Yeah, okay.
Can I work backwards?
Because
Because
you want to tell it.
because what I want to share is that it was in speaking with you, Tababu, forgive me here, that I made a huge breakthrough, because I knew that it's important through all the work that you two have described so well, that we're trying to meet basic needs: food, shelter, clothing, education, healthcare, water, energy. All those things used to be provided close at hand, and finance. And we've gotten away from that, and we live in a global system. So how do we unrig that system? And if we do, how do we relate? How does the greater Tacoma area, Tacoma, DC, and Tacoma, Maryland, possibly work with farmers cooperatives in Southwest Ethiopia? And you helped me see that if both those places in the world are able to meet their basic needs, then it's easier for them to partner, and then they're not at a disadvantage. So that was the light bulb for me, and why I wanted to work with you and your coffee work and your Benefit Corporation initiative for Africa, because that's what helped me see that if we can do the local investment and infrastructure building here, and it's done elsewhere, then we can create a true global network of self-reliant communities, which is where we need to be. And so, forgive me again if I didn't tell the story maybe you wanted to tell, but I also maybe could attempt to say that I was frustrated with the work I did with Community Forklift, and I won't necessarily go into the reasons why, but I wanted to do something much bigger. And we haven't gotten very far, but I think we're on the precipice of making huge advances just by networking. And that's where the future is going to be. It's going to be about ordinary people working with each other and recognizing that we're not just consumers, we're all producers. We work. And that's where the solutions for climate change and all the other eco-crises are going to come from changing how we do business.
Thank you, thank you. It's all, yes. Okay, I'm going to turn the question and answer to the audience, but before I do that, it's all about stories. It's amazing. 2010, 2011, Terry drove me to Baltimore to register to be the first Benefit Corporation. And we drove back to Jamie's house, took a picture on his patio looking at, and then when Lori was running, she was an activist, I was an activist. And when her farmer's market, when they were doing a fundraising, Sarah and I taught folks how to cook Ethiopian. About 25 people came, they paid $100, we raised $2,500 for it. Now, God willing, next year, when we finally put Placid Coffee Roasting Cafe, we're gonna source from the woman who uses that community. It's all about connections. And at the end of the day, It has to be our religion. It has to be our way of life. Sarah and I have, I was going to sit and tell you about Blessed Coffee, the story, the progress, till Ham came, and I will do, and soon, stay tuned. But we finally were able to break the backbone of the bureaucracy in Ethiopia that made it very difficult for us to give the farmers an opportunity to, because there's no legislation. They thought I was crazy to talk about. In fact, now I have a gentleman in the house who is an executive director of Ethiopian Civil, he's sitting in the back, Ethiopian Civil Ethiopian Civic Society Organization Council. They signed a memorandum of understanding with us to help educate the government policymakers to be open to the idea of incorporating such. There's a movement called Socialist Enterprise Ethiopia, but they're locked. So it's all about, we're here in this planet Earth, we can make it better, and I argue local economy, local commitment to our humanity and our local space, but connected is the way out. So with that, I'm going to give you, the gentleman, all the question in the house. Let's make it a dialogue. Who has a question to whom? Yeah. No, I introduced them. I was introducing everybody. I gave them the introduction. Yeah. So
I wanted to hear more about his Echo Premier tank and how he plans to implement that.
there you go. A question from the floor.
Sure. Thank you, Terry. Let me take this time to thank Tebabu because I interviewed him. He's one of my first candidate for interview when I was doing my PhD. I'm really glad for that. I'm very grateful. And also, Terry, thank you. Yeah. So ecopreneurship project, or I combine this two part, ecopreneurship plus peace part. So ecopreneurship basically means ecological entrepreneurship. How our younger generation can involve in businesses which are economically sustainable, at the same time ecologically beneficial for the community. For example, like Style Up, one of the project Sarah did. Style Up, she wants to use old clothes and she wants to upcycle them. So you can see the ecological benefit there. And Glowing Globes, for example, he also wants to use reusable materials while designing, innovating glowing globes, and so many others. So my vision, my dream is that I take it as a holistic approach, meaning it's not like teaching about only entrepreneurial stuff. It's not only that. How they can become a global citizen, how they can learn such a valuable skill. For example, how they can build their inner peace. For example, what will you do with the money if you don't have inner peace? If you are stressed out and you just, one day I don't want to use a bad word, but thinking about committing suicide or something, it's not, there is no value of money. So we have to follow holistic approach, which includes all these component of peace, soft skill, hard skill, economic skills, ecological skills, socially beneficial skills. I think that combines as a whole, which I call holistic approach. That's, by the way, that's one of the finding of my dissertation, is that holistic thinking, not paradoxical thinking, not like a zero-sum thinking, how one mission, triple bottom line, complement, interconnected with each other. So that's what, thank you. Thank you for asking.
Any question, comment, advice? Objection? Suggestion? Sure.
Yeah, I think so. So this is where, what I was sort of trying to get at is I think we need to really find the coalitions across the state. I think when we look at this, what I'm saying about what it is that makes change. I will say another area where I had been am working with folks who might know Bread in Baltimore on worker co-ops. So that's been another area that I've been in these conversations, which is sort of part of, I think, a lot of the similar thinking about how do we keep money in the economy and move away from extractive economics. So there are sort of these different efforts that are going on. The co-ops is another area where we've seen sort of one-offs, where the bill sort of comes in and we don't necessarily have the grassroots organizing across the state that it's going to take to get it through, and I'm hoping that that'll be different this year. One of the things that I've been doing is connecting the folks working on the worker co-ops specifically with other groups that are doing grassroots organizing around worker justice issues in the state. I think those are really important coalitions. So I think that, legislators listen to their constituents, and so really that's, often. They also, corporate America is very powerful and has it's a real force everywhere in Annapolis and everywhere else. And some of these companies, the bankers, they have, several lobbyists in Annapolis, and they work very, very hard at influencing and at scare tactics, like this is going to be the end of banking, as no one's going to be able to get credit once you open a public bank, those sort of scare tactics. And so it's just really important to have people across the state who are reaching out to their legislators, not just during the legislative session, right? Like, these conversations need to be happening all across the state now, not just in January when we're trying to get their votes. And it's that kind of organizing throughout the year so that people are talking to their legislators and saying, we see this new vision, we understand this new vision, we understand this new way of doing things that doesn't even, at least at this point, I'd like to see this way of doing things take over completely. But right now we're just talking about like a small piece of it, right? And that people in their communities are calling on those legislators, my colleagues, to do this, as well as me calling on my colleagues to do this. That there's times I can get my colleagues to shift their votes, and I work very hard at it, but it's got to be coming sort of from both angles. And so that's where this piece about who are we organizing with across the state, in addition to the organizing that we're doing here, which is a really important piece of this bigger puzzle.
Good. Any question? My last question, in fact, that's a good segue to the last question that I'm going to have. Here we have an audience, and I don't know how many people are watching us. From your point of perspective, your point of position of service, in order for you to move your commendable public service beyond just working hard to bring it to fruition, what is that you ask from us? What is that we need to do? You just mentioned it, but can you address it, frame it in a form of a question, so that we will know what to do? What is that you want from us to make sure that your work on our behalf in that position of power, in that space, is effective?
Yeah, so like good old-fashioned organizing I think really thinking about who are the organizations, who are the people who share these interests in Baltimore and in Carroll County and in Salisbury and in all of these other places, like really finding where the folks are who can be part of this movement. And I think you've got some of them here, and these folks are probably connected to people in other parts of the state. I think really thinking about those thinking about where the statewide interests for organizing. I also think, I will say, I love representing District 20. It's glorious to have almost every single phone call I get be asking me to vote and support progressive social change, justice-oriented approaches. I encourage. I actually have this thing that I talk about sometimes when I've presented to other Tacoma Park groups or other District 20 groups, which I call find yourself someone that you know in another county where we need the votes, and that's just about everywhere. And so, but in particular, look at Economic Matters Committee is the committee that, that actually a lot of the climate change stuff comes to us because we have energy. Most of the economic justice stuff comes to us. All the labor stuff comes to us. And so get to know that committee. And do you have, a cousin in Carroll County? And can you find a, church or a synagogue or a mosque in, Baltimore County in that district that can, reach out to, and someone who trusts you, that when you call them and you're like, hey, there's this public banking bill that's coming, can you call your rep and make sure that they're going to vote for this? We don't get a lot of calls, and legislators outside of District 20 get even fewer calls. So when they get a call from your cousin who's in whatever that district is, like, hey, I know that vote's coming. If you're on my newsletter list, you can see, like, I'm keeping people posted on what's coming in front of us. And you make that phone call, like, I know this is coming, that actually could make a real big difference. And so even just if you think about your own networks across the state, who do you know who lives in those places? And can you either educate them and fire them up, or at least go, like, you trust me, right? Okay, call your legislator and tell them to vote for this public banking bill that's coming over there. Thinking strategically, I think, like that is really important, because that's how we sort of organize to get the votes to ultimately to get it out of committee.
Wonderful. But there's one thing you missed that I was hoping you would say. Oh, by the way, in the interest of disclosure, I serve as a chair of her campaign because she does our work. So the first thing you need to do is you need to be connected to her. You need to follow her. You need to support her. You need to sign. You need to see her bills. So those of you who live in District 20, you have an amazing, commendable public servant. So join her, know her issues, express your concern, get engaged, because without your active engagement, everything that Michael talked about is not going to work, because the political system is, for a lack of a better word, is hijacked by interest groups. So we need to take charge. So that I was hoping that you would say that. I'm proud to be her friend. I'm proud. I've seen her work hard. So each and every one of you later on get her card, be connected, know her, work with her, support her, so we can make things happen. Thank you for your service.
Sure, thank you.
And friendship. Okay, Jim, next is you. So what is your ask to the community? What is that you need? Well, at the very least, they can go to your website and register. And
Sure.
What is that you want?
So since you gave your disclosure, I'm going to make full disclosure that Babu is actually the newest member of our board of directors at ARC. So we're very pleased to have his service to come very soon. But I think I would say that your encouragement to learn more about what Michael is talking about, and by the way, I'm no relation, so Schulman and Schuman is, and I'm not being paid to say that. I have a number of your books, and it's really where we need to go. And it's just about matching, as everybody has said, matching your values with your practice. And that's really hard. And I was feeling guilty about being a coffee drinker, okay? A coffee drinker, it's not a local product. But you helped make it blessed for me, Tababu, because now I can feel like there's work going on in the world to make the world of coffee growing more equitable. And so if we can, if anybody's going to do anything, buy fair trade, buy local, buy regional. So that's my answer.
All right. Thank you. Well, in terms of disclosure, Michael Schuman is a dear friend. He's been advising Tara and I for a long time. It's a small network, friends. And, in Ethiopia, Michael, I don't know how many times I've said Michael Schuman. And here, I don't know how many times I've said, put your money where your life is. Michael said. Okay, so Ham, now to you. I know you're aspiring, you're working to put an academy.
Yeah.
We're going to have a conversation on how we can collaborate on that. I know you want to do the 6 weeks, you want to scale up the 6 weeks program to a year long. What is that you want from folks?
Sure. Thank you, Tababu. And thank you for the encouragement. I already reached out to Delegate Lorig. I talked to your team of staff. We had Zoom meeting. We met. I'm reaching out many people, by the way. We had Democracy Can Be in Park event last time. I met many council members, Congressman Jamie Raskin. As I mentioned, I indicated a bit earlier, my request would be, this is my dream project. I resigned from my job
Yeah. Look into the camera because folks are
Oh,
looking, watching
okay.
you.
All right. So this is my dream project. I really want to, because this is not only like only it's a kind of theory. It's like a proven model. We have to scale up, because 1.5 month intensive working with our younger generation. They are the one. Why only one Greta again? Why not we have like a 10 Greta, 100 Greta? Greta Thunberg, you might know, many of you. From Sweden, only 16-year-old. Malala from Pakistan. Why only one Malala? Why can't be there? She got Nobel Peace Laureate. She's a Nobel Peace Laureate, by the way. So why only one? Why not many? So my request, I would say, I'm not asking. Asking is not kind of good word for me. I would say maybe from my culture, you know. My request would be, if you could help in any way. This is not Ham's dream. This is like kind of a common dream, I believe. I strongly believe that way. So if you could help, like let's say connecting me with the right people, because I was doing kind of international work. So I don't want to go into detail, but my wife would call me 2 a.m. in the morning. My younger daughter is 5-year-old. You know, husband, daughter is sick. I thought that, you know what, no, I cannot continue this because I have 3 kids. Yeah. So I came back and I really want to focus on this D20 primarily. I really want to make this happen. It's not kind of, I don't think that's a dream. It's a real thing we can do. Maybe at scale, let's say I work with the 10 students, maybe 20 students, maybe 30. We can scale it up like that. So whatever way you could help. One real help I need is, I have a little, let's say, plant business. You know, Life is Tech is a non-profit, but I call it eco venture. And I propagate plant myself, and then I sell one plant. I sell means I plant one plant either in landslide area of Nepal, or one plant in Middletown, Maryland. My friend has 160-acre land. I plant there. My family on Earth Day, we planted about 1,000 plant. But little money I have, I use that money to provide that eco-partnership and peace education. Yeah. I am doing that. I'm just, whatever money I had, I'm just running out of my fuel, quite frankly. Yeah. So I'm just very blunt, very straightforward. I'm telling you, whatever way you could help, little help, like I want to quote President Obama, roughly quoting. He said, never ever hesitate to ask. Asking is not your weakness, it's your strength. So I really believe it from my heart, from bottom of my heart. So whatever way, asking is my big weakness, by the way.
You're doing a good job.
Yeah, I think I need your help on that. So yeah, I think you already got my point.
How are we doing with time? Terry, where is Terry, timekeeper? All right, I'm going to wrap it up. It looks like we're coming to the end. So there's no closing remark. There's going to be a marching order, actually. I'm going to flip it. I usually tell people what I do has quadruple bottom line. Planet, profit, people, and purpose. Let me tell you what, at the end of the day, after 10 years of going up and down, finally it dawned on me, what Sarah and I are trying to do is to prove the fact that any given community has within itself what it takes. Because Blazer Coffee has been touched, supported, from a high school volunteer student to people in the position of power. By the way, currently, the business plan of Blazer Coffee is being revised by MBA students from University of Maryland. That's a public institution. We tapped into it. The profit-sharing investment partnership where we aspire to sign with the farmers come January is right now being drafted by they call it Entrepreneurship Legal Clinic at American University. That's a public institution. So we have what it takes within ourselves. Okay? So I'm going to close by saying there is intelligence in our community, goodwill in our community, wisdom in our community, time, political power, investment power, if we know how to tap into that. So how do we go about being alive? First and foremost, we have to believe and give. We have to be present in our community, not for selfish reason, but to be part of it. We have to be the change we seek. We have to live the change we seek. Have conversation. My wife and I have many friends in this city because the path we took afforded a connection to many. So that said, I want you to work out with this mental image. Imagine a wallet. The wallet has 4 cards in it. The first is the social capital. Use it on a daily basis. Invest, charge it by having a conversation, by having a deeper conversation, by helping the little that you have, by volunteering, by expand, deliberately invest on your social capital, because that's your base. How are you going to ask people for investment if they don't know you? So live your life. Use that social card. It's a social. Charge it on a daily basis. You never know when you can use it. You can tap into it. The second card that you have is your political card. Be active. Be engaged. Know who represent you. Deal with them. Let them know what you care about, from the city to the state, county, and federal. Get involved. Make time. It's priority. Volunteer. Be with them. So you need to charge your political capital, because now, when you have that political capital, from the 12 agendas that Michael talked about 4 of them or 5 of them, we need policy to abide to our collective aspirations. So we have to challenge it. We have to make it so. It's just a matter of going, meeting them, not calling them. Going, meeting them, demanding that they include you in their political madness. Because we need to be active. That's your political capital. The last card you have is your purchasing and investment power. Next time you go buy something, think the consequence. When you buy coffee from some folks, I literally tell you, you're telling hardworking farmers in Ethiopia to starve. Because hardworking coffee farmers in Ethiopia do 90% of the work, only get 10% of the money we pay to the people who sell it to us. The people who sell it to us only do 10%, they keep 90% of the money we pay. They charge us exuberant amount. And if you ask them, why do you do so? They will tell you they have a fancy logo and a fancy chair and a nice corner street. So you have a wallet, you have a social capital, you have a political capital, use it wisely, make it a lifestyle. Otherwise, as I said earlier, the world is going crazy. Behind every craziness, there is economic issues. Behind every policy, there is interest group doing what they're doing. So we have to take our life back, because I'm giving up with the world. I only find my humanity in you, in this place where I live home. So with that, the last marching order, please sign up. If you have any question, get involved, engage them. They are as strong as your support, okay? And then those of you who are interested to take this conversation further, we're gonna do online mobilizing, Marylanders, whatever. So let's have a conversation. Let's see please, I will send you, if you don't have it, that 12 action agenda, read it. And of course, don't forget to buy the book. It's a wonderful read. I've given it as a Christmas gift, next to Jamie's book. That's an investment, And so with that, I thank you, and I thank you. I think together we have a shared goal, a shared dream, and together we can make it. And those of you from my community, I know you have a lot of aspiration and talent and gift, and you're marginalized, but you have to come out, get engaged, and put your ideas on paper, and be active. With that, I'm gonna call back Terry to close.
You're done. All right, thank you. Thank you to all of you for your work here tonight. I appreciate that, and hearing your observations and your requests to the community. And thank you to Babu for your work here. And now I'd just like to give one last message to everyone before you leave. Please stop at the table outside and get a piece of the celebrating cake.
Oh yeah, we have a birthday cake, yeah.
There's a anniversary cake for the 13th anniversary of Benefit Corporation here in Maryland. And thank you again, Mr. Schuman. And Mr. Showman.
Terry, can you tell them moving forward, we're going to celebrate it, we're going to own it, celebrate it every year. It has been neglected, like that abandoned child.
We will have more to celebrate next year, because we're all going to be doing our work and coming back to report. All right, thank you. Good night, all.